Hi, this is Jenny Spinner of Snack Food and Wholesale Bakery, and welcome to our video series. Today I have with me, it's an honor and a pleasure to talk to Ayeshah Abuelhiga of Mason Dixie Foods.
Hey Jenny, how's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. Thanks for spending time with us. I'm excited to chat with you, and I wanted to just ask you a couple questions about your business and your history, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, first of all, if you could please tell us about your interesting journey from the corporate world to Biscuit Boss. From Mason Dixie's beginnings as a kitchen operation, you were selling biscuits out of an ice chest, your restaurant, and now you're in retail shelves everywhere from Whole Foods to my tiny corner market in Chicago.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I mean, I never really intended, as a kid to start my own business. I was actually told the opposite, right? I'm a child born of two immigrant parents. And, as a kid, immigrant parents always say, don't take money that's not yours. And in their world too, they were like, business people are like corner store owners, right? So my parents were one of them. So to say you want to become an entrepreneur or a business owner is a scary sentence to them, right? Because they're just so focused on thinking that college education and a traditional career path is upward mobility. And I quickly realized, as I was the first in my family to go to college, as I was, the first to kind of have to figure out life post education, right? That I didn't really see eye to eye with what my parents were seeing, right? I realized, one, I was usually smarter than a lot of my managers. And I think this is I think it's a real thing nowadays, especially with this Gen Z generation. They grew up in technology, they grew up in information access at their fingertips. They are smarter than we are, right? I think there was a great tech divide that I think made it really hard for folks in the older generations above my millennial to accept that, right? And I think my parents are kind of struggling with that themselves, right? That fulfillment would come differently for us. So I started my career after I graduated. I was working in consumer electronics. I worked in software, tech, management consulting, and I ended in the automotive industry. And it was about a 14-and-a-half-year schlep. And, I was constantly declined promotions. I was constantly declined access to larger titles, especially in the software and automotive spaces. And I just thought, how long am I going to wait my turn, right? How long do I have to wait my turn? Especially when I was in automotive, it was a very flat organization. And the problem with that is there's all these people in queue for promotions that truly didn't deserve them. And I think the last straw for me was watching a male, more senior teammate apply for a job that was literally written for me and got it because of his tenure. That was like the last straw. I was like, I manage my own domain. I do everything I can to contribute to company success, and yet it's not rewarded. So I think it's time for me to work for myself. And I took that leap of faith. And I started Mason Dixie just kind of on a whim. I mean, at that time, this is like 2013, 14. We got started in Washington, D.C. It was a hotbed of fast casual restaurant activity, right? There was Cava, Sweet Green, Five Guys, and pizza. We were all buddies. We would meet up at we all had the same architect. So we'd meet up at his house for his birthday and, chit chat. And I was just so inspired by this startup scene that wasn't so, one, just uber masculine. The restaurant industry is, but coming out of software startups, it's like this like weird bro culture or like absolute nerd culture. And I love the nerd culture, but that wasn't who got the glitz and the glam, right? It was the bros that did. So it was interesting to be a part of this like food world. It's a very unifying thing. And I grew up in the food industry in many ways. My parents owned this little corner store that my mom was smart enough to like create kind of like we call them carryouts in Baltimore, kind of like deli counter service. She would serve like comfort food out of there because she realized the corner store was in a food desert and there was nowhere to get like prepared food. She made a killing there, and that was something that always resonated with me as I grew up. And then So, but myself through college, I worked in restaurants, probably mostly to feel like I could belong, but also it was great cash, great camaraderie. You know, you're working with all sorts of people, all sorts of backgrounds. There's 3 different languages running in the kitchen. It's absolute chaos. You know, it was it was a place I felt like I belonged. So I think when I kind of got introduced to all the fast casual startup guys, it was like home, right? And when I started looking at the patterns of what people were doing, it was, you know, clean label burgers, whether it's Five Guys or Shake Shack. There was and pizza with raw natural ingredients you got to pick and put on your pizza. You know, there was a movement towards more natural fast food options. And yet, one of the most popular, right, being, you know, fried chicken, biscuits, right? KFC, Popeyes, and Chick-fil-A were the global images for that cuisine. And it was wild to me. I mean, filled with preservatives, filled with sodium, high calorie, high fat content, unnatural ingredients, right? I mean, American comfort food, American soul food, had a farm to table sordid history, right? Because slaves grew the food. They were asked to put it in a skillet and serve it to their owners. But that is the origin story of that cuisine. And yet it was manipulated into, you know, gravy that looks like condensed mushroom soup and chicken breast the size of your head. Like that's, you know, and that's just not normal, right? And then on top of that, throw a little bit of bigotry in your company history, like, you know, Chick-fil-A. It just, how is that what we want the world to see as our native cuisine, right? And you know, despite being pretty low income, I mean, we grew up in public housing till I was about 12 years old. My parents still always instilled the principle of clean eating, know what you eat, know where it comes from. We used to go to like in northern Baltimore, there's a lot of agricultural fields. We used to go to a pick your own, and we would pickle. My parents would buy bruised produce at the end of season. You know, they would buy whole animal. I don't know how I'm not a vegan after watching that, but you know, it was one of those things where it's just like, okay, I know where my food comes from, and I appreciate that, and I know what to look for, when to buy seasonally, all the things, right? And it was missing from this industry segment. So when I started Mason Dixie, was really to get back to the roots of the cuisine and the natural aspects of bringing out the best of the ingredients that are going into very simple food. I mean, never did I imagine it was going to take off into a consumer brand. That was not the intent. But I don't know if you know the story, or if viewers know the story, but you know, shortly after I started Mason Dixie as a concept and I quit the corporate world, I kind of used a lot of the learnings I had from being in the business arena, right? Being in big corporate, right? Specifically, because when I was in automotive, I was working on some pretty cool projects. I was working on automated driving. I was working on all the nifty apps, you know, and intelligent vehicle systems at large. And I worked a lot with the app community that was burgeoning at the time. And I learned a lot about different technologies. And so I always go back to the story because it's a fun one. But when I realized going to all those fun little happy hours and stuff with all the fast casual founder crew, right? I realized that it was an industry that was worth disrupting, and that I was not a celebrity chef or a cool kid or bro. So I wasn't going to get the same press to be able to get people to the restaurant. So I heard about this small website at the time called Kickstarter. It hadn't had a single food brand on it yet. And I was like, this is interesting, because their whole premise was they were really good at creating media buzz and SEO, just because their website was designed that way. And so we posted the concept on Kickstarter just to see what would happen. And it was like the most beautiful thing in the world, because it was only a $25,000 campaign. It wasn't about the money. It was about getting a gauge on consumer acceptance and getting the buzz. And every day I would get private messages in that inbox that were like, oh my God, I love this concept. I love biscuits. All of them on the market suck. Oh my God, this reminds me of my great grandfather, right? He used to love a tomato and cream cheese biscuit. Oh my gosh, you know, my Nana used to make the best jam, you know, and put it on biscuits. Would you ever make it for us? It was, everyone had an anecdote, story, a visceral reaction to the food. And that, I was like, this is interesting, because obviously we're not just selling food now, right? We're selling emotions, we're selling memories, we're selling nostalgia. Like there's so many things to that. It just really reframed the concept even more and really helped me understand that this can't just be about good food. It's got to hit everything. It's got to pluck the heartstrings. It's got to be good for your body, good for your soul, good for your family, you know, good for your community. And so we really tried to drive at that premise very early. So we did our first pop-up by demand of the Kickstarter backers, because they were like, hey, we gave you this money, now why don't you have a restaurant tomorrow, right? Like it was just like the bad side of when you throw things out to the world that people don't understand yet. But I was like, you know what, you're right. You deserve to taste this stuff. You deserve to see what your money's going to. And I'm guaranteed they're going to be jazzed. So I'm thinking we're going to get 60 people, right?
Right.
Queuing up to this pop-up. We're in the back of a gelato factory a friend of mine owned.
Nice.
In the hood. And it's like 7:00 in the morning. And our sous chef for the day looks through this little garage door, you know, little window. And he's like, hey, there's people out there, as he's like prepping the breading for the chicken. And I was like, people. And I went out and there was a line wrapped around 4 blocks. It had turned around the corner. And I was like, holy crap. I was like, you know, calling all my bartender friends, was like, are you awake? Get over here, help me. Right. And it was wild, right? It just, I was planning for 60 people to come in 8 hours, and we had 60 people like every 30 minutes, right? It was just
wild, yeah.
Nonstop. So the reception was there, the acceptance was there, people wanted us. And so we started to really try to figure out our destiny on the restaurant side. And our first pop-up was a permanent pop-up, was in this food hall. We had like a small 8x10 stall, didn't have electricity. It had one outlet, one hand sink, and a column in the middle of it, right? So it wasn't the most ideal spot, but that was where we were secret shopped by Whole Foods. And what happened was that tiny stall could only fit so much food, right? Like we had a car to go system that would go run back to our commercial kitchen and bring food back. It was a nightmare. And in the times where we ran out of food, because sometimes we'd run out by like 10 a.m. It was just wild. We would then go, okay, well, what's the solution to serve customers when we're down waiting for a re-up? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start freezing these pucks. My pastry chef was like, don't you dare, you're going to ruin the integrity. And I was like, how am I ruining it? And like, you're making them, I'm going to put them in the freezer and we're just going to cook them later and see how they go. And they rose beautifully. I mean, even better than when they were made fresh every day, because the leavening was like frozen in time. And it was like, you know, there's a lot of science behind it, but the steam action, all the things. And when I realized that was going to be a hit, I ran to Bed Bath & Beyond, about $100 food saver machine. And I started vacuum sealing these 6 counts of biscuit pucks. And we didn't even have a freezer. We had, to your point, an igloo cooler in this tiny 10x10. And a handwritten marker, like in sociopath letters, right? Like buttermilk, right? Like cook for 20 minutes. You know? So those were in this cooler. This woman from Whole Foods walks by and she buys out the entire cooler. And I was like, okay, didn't really think anything of it. She was like, my son loves biscuits. 3 months later, she shoots us an email to say, hey, my son killed these. I would really love to have the product. Can you stop by and drop off some samples? And I thought she was just a fan and she wanted, you know, more biscuits for free. And you know, we did everything for Rockstar customers, right? We fly people out to, like, there was actually a woman we flew out from San Francisco. She was such a super fan, Kickstarter backer, to come to a couple pop-ups. And we had, we do all kinds of fun things. But anyway, she is at Whole Foods. I bring this box of, literally, I took an old produce box that looked like free kittens, you know, like really crappy. It was just throwing all the, you know, bags of biscuits in there. And I show up to her and she's like sitting there merchandising the bags. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I was thinking, how are we going to put these in the freezer at the store? And I was like, oh my God, I thought you meant you wanted these for your kid. I didn't realize this was for the store. And I was like, give me some time. I'll make it nice. Right. And then we'll come back and get it in the store. So 9 months later, you know, this is before there was really a lot of advice in this, right? Like breads were deemed unnatural at that time because they
Sure.
were not gluten-free and all the things, you know, so it was really hard to figure out what the destiny of the product was going to be. But I thought, hey, it's better than selling t-shirts at the restaurant, right? Like, this is great marketing. So I had to I got most of my advice from the dialine.com, right? It was like, there wasn't a lot of information. Yeah, great site, right? But the most unrealistic packaging you could ever see. So you're like, oh, wow, that'd be really cool, but not feasible. So finally got this thing in a box. It was the day before Thanksgiving, 2015, and we outsold butter and milk that day.
Nice.
Yeah, it went viral through the whole Whole Foods ecosystem, and that's when I knew, right, that there was something there, right? We just didn't really know what yet, but that was like the moment where I was like, interesting how this is something that could have its own legs. And sure enough, here we are, right? 7, 8 years later.
That's awesome. Not to make this about me, but just for a second. I'm not that interesting. You're more interesting. So your media team reached out to me one day, not too terribly long ago, and said, hey, this Mason Dixie woman has a really cool story. The products are good. You write about bakery products, including frozen breakfast stuff. Would you like to talk to her? And I said, hold on a second. And then I sent an email of the single serve biscuit sandwich box that I just pulled out of recycling because I had just eaten one of your sandwiches that morning for breakfast. And it was interesting because I'm like not a breakfast person normally. I'd gone to my corner market that morning and I wanted a breakfast sandwich, and I specifically wanted a biscuit sandwich, just craving. And it's a small market, but there's still a couple of choices on the shelf. And I picked yours, thinking back, one person consumer focus group right now. I just wanted one. And I had experience with the other sandwiches, and there are biscuit sandwiches that, I mean, they tasted okay, but the biscuit in the past had just like fallen apart. So I was like, I want to try something new. And I think the fact that it was single serve, but also the packaging. It's simple, it's elegant, everything communicated on the front, like the clean label bona fides. So that appealed to me. And that is why I took it home with me and heated it up. And I could give you a review, but I won't. It was good. But I thought I was going to ask you about the packaging and the clean label and how you arrived at that product that landed in my hands that morning. Oh, and the quality, you have a high standard of quality and how you work to attain that and maintain that.
Yeah, great questions. I mean, I think, again, going back to the restaurant premise, right? It should be clean, it should be natural, it should be simple, and it should be recognizable, right? I mean, when your restaurant concept is based on biscuits, eggs, sausage, and bacon, and fried chicken, these are all very simple recipes. So one, we really believe in the quality of the ingredients speaking for themselves. So our products don't even have like natural flavoring, right? Like there shouldn't need to be flavoring if you use great ingredients, right? So we scour every manufacturer that is available to us in the United States to give us the best quality of any one ingredient that we use. So when we perfected the biscuit, we knew we had a sound basis to get after that red box that you didn't like. And we also knew that it was time in the market to really introduce proteins to the mix. It was hard because we'd wanted to actually release the sandwich that you had years ago, but the natural protein industry was like, no one's going to buy it, or the protein industry didn't think anyone would buy natural. And I was steadfast about it. And then finally, like Whole Foods was like, what would be great is if you could make us a sandwich that had real meat in it, because the plant-based stuff is not selling. And we're in an emergency mode. This is in pandemic. This is 2020. And I was like, I got you. So all I kind of needed was this seal of approval from Whole Foods to really get the protein industry motivated and listening. And, when we went to them, they gave us what they make, and it was not good. Like, for example, the biggest one, eggs. When we saw the samples of frozen egg patties that are out on the market today, even ones that are cage-free, they are all made out of egg protein whipped with oil, stabilizer, all this stuff to reconstitute into a molded egg. And I was like, here's an idea. What if the ingredients were just egg? Like, why can't you just freeze an egg patty? And they were like, well, we've never done it before. We can try. And finally, we got to it. And so we are the only manufacturer that has a 100% real egg patty. The ingredients are literally eggs and salt. So, it was a huge breakthrough, and you would think, what the heck? But that's the state of the world we're operating in. Similarly with the protein, like sausage is notoriously not clean label because phosphates, nitrates, something's got to be in there to kind of bond and preserve the meat. But we proved it doesn't, right? There's other ways to do it naturally through various seasonings and natural ingredients like rosemary that really can do the same job. And so we pushed and partnered with the largest sausage manufacturers in the country to create the patty that we have today. And I think all that culminated, and we were really excited about it. When we were really looking at what was going on, we produced a sandwich that was lower in calorie, higher in protein, lower in fat, and tasted better. And so that was the premise of everything. It was like, it has to taste the best. It has to be the cleanest you can make it. And it has to be simple, right? The ingredient label has to be transparent to the consumer so they understand what they're eating. Because that's how I shop. That's how I want to eat. And in the end, we launched those sandwiches in Whole Foods, and within our first 6 weeks on shelf, we hit their target velocities. And in some of our top stores, we do more than potato chips in velocity. So it's been a game changer item for us.
That's rad. That's rad.
Yeah, I know, in a frozen sandwich, right?
Yeah. I was hoping we could talk about you're the kid of immigrants, Korean Palestinian. How has that background impacted your experience? And have you encountered any misconceptions about what it means to be an Asian woman with a traditionally American food? Like, why aren't you producing Korean food? A couple of interviews, I think you've addressed that, but yeah, could you share what you've encountered and how you've reacted to that?
Yeah, I think the world's definitely very devolved at the moment in terms of how it views things. I always tell people when they ask me, that really annoying question that only, non-white people get asked. And it's like, where are you from? And I'm like, Baltimore, and they're like,
Right.
No, but really, I'm like, America, right? Like, I was born here. I'm 100% blue-blooded American. I don't understand what the stigma or how it got created that the face of Southern comfort cuisine should be like Paula Deen, right? Again, let's go back to the roots of where this food came from. It wasn't Paula Deen, right? And I think that innocent, genteel South character is what, for some reason, is emblazoned in people's heads about who deserves to make American comfort food. The reality is we're beyond that, right? We're way beyond that. The country is now 40% diverse. And so frequently we have been asked, well, you don't look like the type that grew up on biscuits. And first I'm like, is that because you think that people that eat biscuits should be like obese? Like, one, two, and then do you think that because I look Asian, even though I'm 100% American, even though my mom is Korean and literally learned how to make this food by working at Lexington Market here in Baltimore with a Black-owned fried chicken vendor that was in there doing chitlins and, fried chicken gizzards and all the stuff. She learned all that stuff here. Why and who gets to dictate what you look like when you make food? I think, we're approaching AAPI month, and it's always a point of contention for me because, I feel like I do identify as half Asian American. I'm very proud of that, but I don't understand why the features have to be, there's an Orientalism, right, that comes with how media and consumers ingest Asian culture. I don't have to make a Korean fried chicken biscuit to make a biscuit, right? I don't need to do what you think Asian people should do just because it in your mind, there's an authenticity element to that, right? That just doesn't really make sense. In fact, I was on an interesting panel. I was on an AAPI panel at South by Southwest with a bunch of incredible founders and movers and shakers in Asian leadership. And there was an interesting stat that, and I think it's cultural. Asians are typically not ones to brag. We don't talk about ourselves. Success is in what you do and contribute to the world, not what you brag about. And so we always get left out of the metrics of it, or all kind of combined with white. But if you were to use Asian success metrics in business, it would be game over. Us plus the rest of the POC community would over-index on successful CEOs, founders, businesses over any white-owned business, or white-managed business. So there's a lot to unpack there, right? I think that I feel a personal obligation, right, to make people more tolerant of understanding what Asian American contributions to society look like. What we are capable of doing. And if you ask me, we do everything really well. It's what we're bred to do. So I'm going to do the best biscuit, right? Like, it just is what it is, right? But I also think it's time for us to kind of change that lens. I also think, one of the exciting things about what we're doing right now is really we're evolving our brand to be more about what the new American classic is, right? What is really American comfort food? It's not just corn dogs and biscuits and traditional nostalgic items. General Tso's chicken is American and new, right? Butter chicken is American and a thing now. I'd even argue Korean fried chicken is becoming an American palate, right, of choice that people want. The lens of what is American needs to change. And I'm really excited about what we're working on here at Mason Dixie, because we're trying to touch on all of that coming up.
Nice. So there are not a lot of AAPI CPG founders. Is that something that the CPG, the bakery, the snack community should foster and encourage? Do you have any suggestions for doing that, for creating a more positive, welcoming environment?
I think it's increasingly becoming more AAPI centric. I mean, at this year's Expo West, there was probably the largest presence of AAPI founders ever, and with all high marked top of the category items. With us, we have the top natural frozen breakfast sandwich in the natural channel. We I think our friends at Phila Manila are the top Filipino food item. I think it's something crazy like that. Fly by Jing is the top Asian condiment. I mean, like, we're crushing it. But again, it's the thing that it's just a cultural thing that we're just not going to go out to the world and brag about things, right? We're just going to show in our actions. We're going to show in the product. We're going to show by the deeds that we contribute to the community. So I think it's more, the onus, I think, is more on consumers to recognize and acknowledge that, right? And to seek those things out. I also think that the retailer community has a responsibility to really start to refocus the lens of what AAPI brands can be. Doesn't always have to be typecast into something that has to be in the ethnic aisle. So for example, like Sanzo with those incredible Asian inspired flavored sparkling waters. It's a sparkling water. It doesn't need to be in the Asian aisle because it has yuzu in it, right? Like, I think that's a devolution of thought. So I think, the more brands like us, like Sanzo, that are kind of correctively moving away from just authenticity markers and just trying to enter the general market space, we're contributing to flavors that people love universally. It doesn't have to be Asian, right? I think we're going to see a lot more from Asian American founders coming up. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, that'll be great. Before we go, what's next for Mason Dixie? Do you have new products, new markets, anything else that you'd like to preview to the readers and audience?
Yeah, in the discussion and in the vein of American comfort food, we're really excited because we're launching an iconically American classic, which is a chicken waffle. So we've got a chicken waffle sandwich hitting shelves in May. Whole Foods nationwide. We also have a clean label liege waffle. It's amazing. It's made with 5 simple ingredients. So it's another, again, incredible bread item that's slack and serve capable. So you could take it, throw it in your kid's lunchbox. By the time they get to school, it's ready to go. And then even more exciting is, we've made biscuits for over 8 years now. And over the course of the pandemic, over the course of us reaching younger and younger audiences, now beyond Gen Z to Gen Alpha, we've realized that there's this turning towards trying to find more convenient, lower cook time, easier to prep. Even though we thought, 8 years ago, one step, puck onto a tray into oven was easy enough. We're really hearing parents saying, we love your biscuits, but I can't let my 10-year-old use the oven, right? We love your biscuits, but when I'm running out the door, I have to make them the night before, and then I reheat them so that my kid can have them for breakfast because they're a picky eater. Those are the sentiments that we really answer to. And so we're also launching a ready to heat biscuit. So it's ready in 30 seconds in the microwave. It's the same formula that we've always had. It's just really quick and accessible. And now it's only 100 calories as well. So you can be guilt-free while having it, which is really exciting too.
Well, that is really exciting. I really appreciate you taking time to share your story and to tease your new products, which looking for those on the shelf. Have a great day. Thanks for your time. And
thanks so much, Jenny.
And thanks for watching. We'll see you later.